for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Let me get back in my groove. So where are we today with Rendlesham? Pretty famous case, right? I have way over 25 years invested in Rendlesham. But I want to take you back for a second, and I want to go way back, because today it all seems easy to do, but back with the Internet 1.0, you know, that was happening back in 1995. I don't know. I don't really remember how this worked out, but I had found a website that had the original audio recordings of Colonel Charles Halt. And back then, when I had thought that I had found and read everything that I could have at the time about Rendlesham, I find these recordings, right? And now, if you're too young to remember what the web was like back then, well, audio and video just didn't exist. They didn't. You could view a picture, but it would literally take minutes. It would scan up and, you know, forget about audio, video. Well, you know, let's just say that there was no video back in 1995. There was ways to do it, and you could take clips of files, and you would have these little apps that would, you know, put everything together. You'd have to download everything, and it was just miserable. You remember that? Putting clips together. Anyway, back to the audio files of Rendlesham. I believe I had to download them and then somehow played them back. And that's not really what is important here. What is important is that I listened to them over and over and over again. Reviewing the event in my head while listening to it, listening to Halt describe what was going on, it was an incredible thing to do. I would sit there, you know, on my couch, and I would have all this reference material out, and I was printing stuff, and I'm listening to Halt, and I'm taking notes. You know, it was remarkable. And to have those audio recordings of an event going down as it did with the military, it was incredible for me. And I was chasing down whatever I could find, you know, and I can assure you that, seriously, that up to that point, I had read every single word that had been published on Rendlesham. There was nothing else available. Somehow I got a copy of Brenda Butler, Dot Street, and Jenny Randall's book, Sky Crash, A Cosmic Conspiracy. And that was about it. I was all in on Rendlesham. I studied it. I knew all of the characters. And since then, I've interviewed most of the original players who were in and around the forest and the base during the incidents, which were not, you know, just one night, but over 3 days back in late December of 1980. And John Burroughs is one of those OG original gangsta witnesses. And I have discussed the event with him both in person and over the phone many, many times. I've also interviewed him a few times over the years. And just when everyone thought that Rendlesham was pretty much on the record, well, you know what? Things have changed. They have. And I find John, who, when you meet John in person and you talk to him, you find him one of the most credible, believable, down-to-earth people on this planet. He's just one of those guys. And the last interview I did with John, I thought that we pretty much had the best conversation anywhere on Rendlesham, on the internet, period. Done. It was just, that was a lockdown moment. He was in the zone. The conversation went where it needed to go. And I thought that was it. And I thought that we could finally start to move on. But over the last year, friendships have broken down in the Rendlesham case. New evidence has come forward, and there's even a new documentary to be released later this year, if you want to call it a documentary. I haven't seen it yet, and so I don't know exactly what's going on. There's actors involved and things. So is it a film? Is it a documentary? I don't know. Documentary means documents, but that's the very definition of it. So you're bringing things forward. So I don't know what the context is of the film, but it's supposed to be released in May. It's called Capel Green. Now, on top of all of that, back in December 2018, I don't know where I was, but I pick up my phone and I'm just like checking out the news, and I see this breaking news story, and it was on, I believe it was on RT. And it was about Dr. David Clark, a British UFO researcher, reporting a claim that Rendlesham, are you ready, was a setup by the SAS, the British, as a revenge plot on the United States Air Force. And according to this story, in August of 1980, 6 months before Rendlesham, the SAS parachuted into RAF Woodbridge to test the security at the nuclear site. All right. Now, today, it's pretty well established that there were nuclear weapons at Woodbridge. But apparently back then it was top secret. It wasn't supposed to be. It was NATO and all kinds of other stuff. But that is according to this report. And that the United States Air Force had recently upgraded their radar and detected the black parachutes of the SAS men as they descended to the base. The SAS troops were interrogated and allegedly beaten up by the United States Air Force personnel, with the ultimate insult that they were called, the SAS, unidentified aliens. I'm putting that in quotes. Now, to enact their revenge, the SAS gave the United States Air Force their own version of an alien event. Now, I'm quoting here from the article. It says, as December approached, lights and color flares were rigged in the woods. Black helium balloons were also coupled to remote-controlled kites to carry suspended materials into the sky, activated by radio controls. So what does that say? And for all of us here in the UFO community, you read something like this, is this something else that has been released to further cloud Rendlesham for us to jump up and say, hey, here's another example of the man trying to cover up something that really happened in the forest that night? I don't know. I don't know. Or is it somebody that's just making all of this up? There were some comments from the lead commander of the United States side, and he said, nah, that's all made up. It never happened. So I don't know. But it's interesting to me to have this alleged incident appear on the front page of Russia Today and other news outlets, again, bringing up Rendlesham. There are even more developments that we'll be discussing tonight with our guest, John Burroughs, as we try to get to the last word on Rendlesham. There is a couple of things tonight that John is going to discuss. Some of it has been out there already, somewhat, and there's other information tonight that has never been discussed live on the air, and we're going to do all of that with John. And I will say this once again, I have 25 years invested into Rendlesham. And just when I thought that I've figured it all out and I was comfortable with what John has presented on this show and with me personally, that I'm that I understand what went on. And it seems to be not the case. So we're going to do all of that tonight with our guest, John Burroughs. Tomorrow night, Paola Harris is here, and we're going to discuss whistleblowers tomorrow. That's what we're going to do. And also, we're going to talk about ufology in South America. Okay, Thursday night is Fader night, open lines all night long. Friday, I'm at the NAM show. Saturday, I'm over at Coast to Coast AM. I am your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back with our guest, John Burroughs. Stay with me.
This is Nicole Church, daughter of you-know-who, and you're listening to Fade to Black on JimmyChurchRadio.com and the Game Changer Network.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roast it to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can get our podcast for just $2 per month. All you have to do is click on the podcast banner over at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hey folks, guess what the number one phrase that Life Change Tea receives by email? You ready? We love this tea. We love this tea. Time after time, week after week, we love this tea. Life Change Tea gives you more energy, a beautiful cleansing, and fulfills its slogan perfectly. The tea that makes you go. So if you want to be on your health game, log on to getthetea.com and order Life Change Super Strength Tea. Packages come in a 1-month supply, and when you brew this stuff, wait until you see the results. Aren't we all about the results? And with a lot of people's health struggling, we can use a little bit of help. Doctors will tell you disease starts in the gut. So log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Be our next email saying, I love this tea. I love this tea. Get the tea at getthetea.com. Helping America one tea bag at a time.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the planet.
Do you want to lose weight but have no idea where to begin? The Fast Start Diet, a 3-day weight loss plan, is the answer. 3 days of nutritionally balanced, calorie-restricted meals delivered right to your door. No shopping, no measuring, and no cooking. Everything is prepared for you and ready to eat at home or on the go. The Fast Start Diet has all the amazing benefits of intermittent fasting without starving. We've helped thousands of people who have struggled to reach their weight loss goals. Isn't it time we helped you? With the Fast Start Diet, you'll lose weight and feel great.
Find Fast Start Diet on Amazon or go to faststartdiet.com and use promo code TALK to get 10% off your first box. And as a special bonus, Fast Start will include their #1 rated Lipo-3 appetite suppressant spray free with your order. This is Jimmy Church. And whatever your diet plans are, do what I did. Go to faststartdiet.com.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Massey, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do. Hashtag F2B. Come hang out in the sandbox. Join the conversation. 2 chat rooms. One over at Spreaker, one over at KGRA, The Planet. Tonight, John Burroughs is here. Gonna put the fork in Rendlesham. Tomorrow night, Viola Harris is here, discussing whistleblowers. Thursday, Fader Night, open lines. Friday, I'm at the NAM show in Anaheim, California. Saturday, I'm over at Coast to Coast AM. Sunday, I'm going to sleep for 18 straight hours. And then Monday, right back here on Fade to Black. Hey, Rita, should I disclose right now who our guest is on Monday? Should I do it? You know what? I'm going to give you guys a sneak peek. Monday on Fade to Black, Daryl Anka. Bashar. Yeah. That's Monday on Fade to Black. Okay. Tonight is John Burroughs. John entered the United States Air Force in 1979 and served 27 years both in active and reserve duty. He is currently United States Air Force Reserve, retired from the Air Force Reserves. John had various assignments throughout his Air Force career. Some of these assignments were at Luke Air Force Base, Osan Air Force Base, Grissom Air Force Base, and that's Indiana, right? Castle Air Force Base, with reserve assignments at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base Prime Beef. Is that right? Williams Air Force Base, Reese Air Force Base, Luke Air Force Base, and has been on many deployments from Italy to the Middle East. Most notable assignment, though, was in 1979 when he was assigned as a security police law enforcement patrolman at RAF Bentwaters England, twin base with RAF Woodbridge. Together, they amassed the largest tactical fighter wing in the United States Air Force. In the early morning hours of December 26, 1980, while working law enforcement patrol at RAF Woodbridge, he had that singular life-changing event where he conducted an investigation on a phenomenon which has left the rest of the world in awe of one of the most documented and witnessed sightings by United States military in known history. I would like to welcome back to Fade to Black our good friend, John Burroughs. John, good evening, man. How are you?
Thanks, Jimmy. Glad to be back, and things are going well, even though it's raining and icy here tonight.
Yeah, and welcome back to the program. And before we get started here, how was your New Year's? How was your Christmas?
It was good, boring but good. I mean, nothing spectacular, like what happened 38 years ago.
Yeah, what's funny? I was sitting here thinking, you and I, over the years, have amassed, I don't know how many hours of phone calls, right, that we have logged in with each other trying to figure out this situation with Rendlesham. And you and I haven't talked since you were last on the air a year ago. And I don't know how that happened, John. I miss our phone calls. And
it's been busy. It's been a busy time in UFO land, I guess.
Yeah, and it's just one of those things. And I just thought, wow, that doesn't seem right. But 12 months can get away from us really quick. So welcome back to the program. And I wanted to ask you before we get started a couple of things. The United States Air Force, and this is unrelated to Rendlesham, okay, so I'm going to catch you off guard here. And the United States Air Force, their military police is called the Security Force, correct?
Well, it was security police back when I first came in, but as I was transitioning out, it would have been around 2000, they changed it to security forces.
Right, security forces. Now, we're in the middle of this government shutdown. And I started to think about this over the last week. And I was thinking about Area 51, right? Now, that is an Air Force base, I believe. That the Air Force is running the base, along with, probably the CIA and whoever else is running those black projects out there. So, what do you think? What do you know? Is the United States Air Force Security Force on base? Is that who would be patrolling Area 51? What's your best guess there?
Well, yeah, definitely. Up until when I got out, the Air Force was the main security behind the base itself, but they did have government contractors also working there. But what's happened since I got out in 6, I can't tell you 100%, but there's no doubt anywhere you have an Air Force installation, you're going to have Air Force security people on it.
And so this is how my polluted mind works, right? So I'm sitting here thinking the government shutdown, we've got issues with TSA and the prisons and everything else, right? Furloughed employees. Do you think that the camo dudes that are patrolling outside of the perimeter of Area 51, are those dudes furloughed right now? Right? Is there any security force outside of Area 51?
Well, I think that would come under essential personnel that the government didn't furlough, you know what I mean?
Right.
And the funny thing is people don't realize that if you get furloughed, at least you can draw unemployment. So you may not be getting full pay, but at least you're getting something. So the guys that are having to work and not getting paid, they can't draw unemployment. That's just wrong, right?
It's wrong. It's wrong. And so I think this is the best time to go crash the gates, man. It's like, let's go out there and see what's going on. Okay.
Yeah, go have some fun, Jimmy. I'm good with it. I wouldn't want to do that.
I'm just saying with all of the land grabs that they did, Peekaboo and all of the ridges out there around Area 51, who's monitoring that right now? And I don't know.
Oh, it's being monitored.
You think so?
They'd be monitoring that, yeah.
Oh, you're crushing me. I was thinking.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the way to find out is on your busy schedule, maybe not this weekend, but if it's still going on the week after, go up there and find out.
That's what I said last night on the air. I can't do it this weekend, but next weekend, road trip, man. Let's
take a road trip.
to put my toe in that pond, and see what happens.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, next thing that I want to get out of the way, and I was thinking about this too as well, is do you have a fade to black shirt?
No, I don't. Never got one. I think you were going to try to give me one when I was down in Roswell and came on, but you ran out of 2X. I think it was,
right. And, okay, so it's 2X because you would be the biggest billboard that I could imagine. And so there you go, because I remember that conversation. So it didn't happen is what you're saying. We've got to get you one because there you go. Okay, my last stupid question before we get started. Did you ever play basketball?
Yeah, I played basketball. I coach basketball too. So.
And why? Because how tall are you?
Air Force officially lists me at 79 inches, which is 6'6".
6'6". Okay, I didn't think you were that short. Okay, so 6'6". Was there a career? Did you have a jump shot? Did you have a possibility of a career in basketball?
Well, let's just say I had an interesting run at basketball. I got hurt my senior year in high school. I hurt my back pretty bad, and it took me a while to recover from that. And instead of hanging around or waiting, going to college, I joined the Air Force. So that kind of killed any chance of ever going to college and going further with it.
Because I'm 6 foot, and I knew that you were tall. And I remember the first time that we met, I wasn't prepared for that. I seriously, you say 6'6", I'm going 6'7", 6'8". But, with my jump shot, if I had your height, I'd be in. That's where I would go. There's no doubt about it. Okay, now let's move on. I'm going to start with the latest, and then we're going to go straight to December 26th, 1980 after that. But last month, there was this article that was released, and I caught it on RT, about this Dr. Clark that says he's debunked Rendlesham, that it was a big prank put on by the SAS because you guys went and beat up some of their paratroopers during an interrogation, so they wanted to pull a prank on you guys, and it was done with kites and balloons and radio-controlled this and that. Did you see the article?
Well, yeah, and honestly, not to be what I mean. The article, if you read it from beginning to finish, Clark scoffed at that at the end of the article. Dave Clark's an interesting guy if you want to spend a few minutes on him, because the listeners might want to know a few things about what he's done with Rendlesham and other things.
Well, so what's your response to that? Is there a possibility that all of this was just a giant prank by the SAS?
No, and if you read the article from beginning to end, he even says it wasn't. It was something that he's actually intrigued by the fact that he was contacted about that, because he's done a lot of FOIA, not just on Rendlesham, but a lot of stuff.
Right.
And for the longest time, he was more of a skeptic. And he's still not on board with the fact that aliens have visited us or Rendlesham was alien-based. But he's done enough FOIA and done enough things that he's come to realize that the British government's hiding something.
And I think that's the reason behind this. In other words, you've got an anonymous source coming forward with this story, and it feels like it was written to get out there to dismiss Rendlesham in general. And when I see something like that, John, my initial reaction is, okay, they are trying to cover something up right now, and this is what they are doing. And that's the way it hit me.
Right. And not only that, but the backstory on David Clark was, and I was pretty harsh on him because I tried to work with him a little bit, because he actually reached out to the base commander at the time of our incident, Colonel Conrad,
right,
and had an interesting conversation with him. And through David Clark, I actually met with Conrad and talked to him, and Clark tried to downplay what Conrad said by not putting everything that Conrad responded to him on. And I called him on this. And then there was another part where I did a lot of FOIA with the British government, and they admitted they were holding files that, they'd already said they'd released them all. And David Clark was part of the final, when they said they released them all. And Clark kind of poo-pooed me on that. And then I come to find out later why. He is a major thorn in the British government side, and he does tons of FOIA. And when he was brought in to come out with the final files, he already knew there were files. Well, let's just say he was told these files are going to be released, and they weren't. And so what he did was, from the day he got egg on his face with the fact that he knew personally that those files hadn't been released, he's been a major thorn in their side. And to say that, well, he could be lying, no, I saw the emails. He gave me everything on what took place with the British government. And there's a court that at the end of the day, when they were stonewalling him on these final files that I found out about, that he took it to the highest court. And what ended up happening was they released the files to him, but they still haven't publicly released them to the rest of the public. So he's got the files, because if it would have went to the court, it would have become major news, and it would have looked again like, what are they hiding or what are they covering? So he's got the files, but they still haven't released the files to the public, if you can believe that.
Okay. This is where we are going to jump back to December 26th, 1980. I want everybody to know, hashtag F2BQ is where I want everybody to post their questions for John tonight. Anything that you have that you've had on your mind about Rendlesham and you want that question answered, post it there. Now, look, there is the possibility here that we're going to have 100 or 200 questions posted up there. I obviously can't get to all of those in 2 hours, 2.5 hours, but post them there, and I will get to them. Let's start with the very basic, and then we're going to move forward through all of this. What were you doing before you were notified on December 26th? Were you on patrol?
Yeah, it was our last midnight shift. We worked 3 3 swings, 3 mids. The swing shifts were from 3 to 11, or 1500 to 2300, and the midnight shifts were 2300 to 0700. And we were on our final midnight shift, so we actually came on duty Christmas night at 2300, and around 0300 on the 26th, which is Boxing Day in the UK. I was on patrol with my supervisor. We were driving around. He was new to the base, and we were just driving around, getting to know each other, talking about different things and his philosophies and stuff. And as we were going down to do a check down at the back part of the base where the East Gate was, but that was one of the things we were supposed to check on, he saw something strange in the sky.
Now, so you were part of that patrol?
Yes.
Okay. And so as you were down by Eastgate, there were things in the sky. Did you see anything descending? Did you see anything coming down into Rendlesham?
I personally didn't. He did. That's what he initially saw. And then when he got my attention, because I'd been there a year and a half, and the gate wasn't normally open at night, but then on alerts and other things it would be. And I'd been down there, obviously on patrol and on the gate during alerts and stuff. And he just said, "Hey, I just saw something come down, and there it is in the forest. Have you ever seen anything like that?" And I took a look. I said, "No, I haven't. No, I've never seen anything like that out in the forest, And he said, "Oh." And then we had a brief discussion, and we decided we would go off base, which is not what we really were supposed to do, and not telling anybody. But it was one of those things where, what is it? What's going on? And let's take a closer look before we say anything. And opened up the gate, went down to the end of the road that would have teed either you went right to one of the villages or you went left towards Bentwaters. And he did a little bit of a U-turn, and I jumped out, and you could still see the lights. It was more like a white light that was in the forest with some little colored lights in the forest. I always said early on, when I was asked more specifically about it, it looked like a Christmas light display, different colored lights within the big white light. And there was a static electricity in the air. And I don't know if you've ever experienced it, Jimmy, but have you ever just been in an area where all of a sudden you just feel like, uh-oh, this ain't right. And there's something here that feels a little out of place. And I don't want to call it a major threat, but you just don't feel right. You don't feel comfortable. You want to get out of there. So turned around and raced back up to the gate and got to the gate shack, which was right there. And it was a direct line to the law enforcement desk. And we called it in that we had something strange going on in the forest.
Okay.
Right outside the perimeter.
So let me stop you right there for a second. The lighthouse, you had been on base for how long at this point?
Year and a half.
Year and a half. So were you aware of the lighthouse?
Okay, that's what I've always said. We knew there was a lighthouse out there. We were near the coast. You could not see the lighthouse from the East Gate.
So, and so I want to be clear here. You have the forest in one direction, the lighthouse is slightly in the other direction, but you know where the lighthouse is. And so you knew at that point, you weren't confusing anything. You saw something in the woods. You didn't see it descend, right?
But he did. He saw it descend.
No, he saw it descend.
Saw it. Yes, he saw it. Yeah, he saw something coming down into the forest, and that's as he saw it, he got my attention, and then you could see it. I could see it in the forest once he got my attention.
Yeah, and so I want the point to be clear here, and for me included. At no point, and this was this Consag?
Was this what?
Who was this that was with you?
Oh, that was Sergeant Stephan.
Oh, that was Stephan. Okay, so you never said to Stephan, "Hey, you know what? That could be the lighthouse."
No, because that's what I'm saying. You could not see the lighthouse from the East Gate. There was whatever we were seeing in the forest, and what I was looking at was something I had never seen the entire time I had ever been stationed there. Both, at night, and I've been on the gate numerous times at night for different things. And that was nothing that was ever seen there prior to what we were looking at that point. So if I'd have been on the gate before and the lighthouse could be seen from there, which it couldn't have been, I would have known, yes, it was the lighthouse.
Now, could you at this point, and this is again before you went and called it in, you're looking into a dark forest at night. Could you see forest beyond the lights? In other words, could you kind of triangulate in your own mind's eye that this is inside of the forest and not on the backside or closer to the ocean? Were you able to do that?
Not really. Because initially when we got down there, it was like the light was kind of farther back. You could see it deeper into the forest.
Right.
But as we got down to the end of the road and made the U-turn, I jumped out. It looked like the light started coming towards us.
Okay, so now you go and you call it in. Now,
right.
This is the thing. I don't know if anybody wants to make this call, right? You don't want to be the guy that's going to say, hey, a UFO just landed in the forest. And we're outside of the gate. But you did. So when you reported it, what did you say?
Well, I called it in and just said crash. It was okay. I'll set the stage. Okay. It was Christmas night. It was the end of a long shift, a 6-day cycle, which is it's wearing. You're tired by that last night. People are away from home. It was a little bit more of a relaxed attitude that night than normal. One of the frequencies, we had 3. They were playing some Christmas music and taking requests and playing music on one of the frequencies. The other 2 main nets were normal. And so I called in the fact that something strange was going on right outside the back gate in the forest. Well, the desk sergeant and I had a history I played practical jokes on him. So I didn't say it was the alien UFO or anything. I just said, crash, something weird's going on. I explained what Stefan saw. Something came down into the forest. There's something in the forest. It's still there. I tried to describe what we were seeing, and he didn't believe me. He thought I was yanking his chain. He thought I was playing a practical joke Christmas night, and he just was kind of like, yeah, right, whatever. I said, seriously, here's Stefan's. Stefan's was new, and he barely knew him too, but Stefan's tried to explain to him. He just wouldn't believe us, so he transferred us to CSC. And that's when we got, the comptroller and the guy that ran CSC, and we started to re-explain what was going on. So at that point, that's when things got strange in our minds, because we just said, look, Stefan said he saw something coming down into the forest. It was there. Something was there. We don't know what it is. And what do you want to do about it? We were just reporting it in. And that's when they called for the security supervisor to come down. And it's always the cringe moment where we're sitting there. It's quiet. Nothing's going on either base. Everybody's just kind of nestled in to get the night over. And then across the radio comes out, security control to, I forget the call sign of the patrol, respond down to the East Gate, code 2, police 4 and 5 reporting a UFO.
Bam.
And then we were just like, oh, God.
Now,
no.
Right. And we've got about 2 minutes to the break. So I have to ask you, and I've wanted to ask you this many times before. Do you think that there was any possibility of something that was caught on radar, that this first report of UFO, because it hadn't been mentioned yet, that possibly they knew that something was seen descending? Look, we're talking about a nuclear installation. We're talking, the largest fighter wing. A very important NATO base, probably the most important NATO base.
Right. Well, that's the whole point. See, we can come back to the whole story, but ultimately, when the security soup showed up, Sergeant Peniston, and he saw the same thing we were seeing, and he got on the phone and started talking to CSC, they started making phone calls to radar installations, Eastern, our radar, and everything else. And the reason why we were even allowed, because this was off base now, this wasn't on base, and it wasn't right on our fence line. The reason why we were allowed to go out there is because radar confirmed an object in that area that disappeared on radar. And because it was in the forest, the shift commander was under the impression maybe something crashed in the forest. And because of the fact that it was close enough to the base that we could go out and investigate. And at the same time, they did contact the British Police Department, and the British Fire Department also. So that's the only reason why we left base in the first place, is because of the radar. Something disappeared on radar.
Now, we're going to head towards a break. So it's Peniston that shows up next.
Right.
Okay. Now, at that point, from your position, were you still observing the lights in the forest?
Yeah, they were there. They were there. They were there the whole time when all the phone calls were going on. The decision making was taking place. It was still there in the forest. So.
Yeah, and what I'm trying to understand here is while you were calling it in, you could still observe the lights. Peniston now shows up. You guys are still on location. You're still observing the lights. He's saying the same things that you are. Did anything change from the first moment that you saw the lights to when Peniston arrived? Did they move? Did they get closer? Did anything change?
When we got down to the end of the road, they started to come a little bit closer towards the main road where we were at. But at that point, they kind of just stayed in that general vicinity. You know what I mean? There was different coloring lights in it, and it never showed itself. We never could make a clear identification on what it was at that point or at any time until we finally got close to it in the forest.
Now, there's electricity in the air. We've got 45 seconds, John. There's electricity in the air. At what point did you start to get to the holy crap feeling?
When we got up close to it.
Okay. So you're still reasonably yourself at this point, and so is Peniston.
Well, for me personally, I was intrigued by what is going on. You know, there was something that like changed in me a little bit. It went from I wasn't scared at that point. I just wanted to know what it was because it just didn't make any sense what we were seeing or what was going on. And I really wanted to get out there to try to figure out what it was.
All right, let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black tonight. John Burroughs is here, and we're going to try to put a fork in Rendlesham. John, are you down for this?
Oh, let's go for it.
Let's do it. It's Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA The Planet. Our guest, John Burroughs. We'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station, Salt Lake City, Utah, Van Buren, Arkansas.
Come join us for the 2019 Conscious Life Expo in Los Angeles at the LAX Hilton. This year, we are celebrating the 50th anniversary of Chariots of the Gods with Eric Von Daniken, and I'll be hosting the panel with Eric, Linda Moulton Howe, Jason Martell, Billy Carson, and join George Norrie, Nassim Haramein, Robert Schock, Daniel Brinkley, Grant Cameron, Julia Mossbridge, and another 50 speakers who will be presenting at the 2019 Conscious Life Expo. Just go to ConsciousLifeExpo.com for tickets and a full conference schedule, or click on the CLE banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Go back, Lee Tappy.
Folks, this is very important information. What's to be said about CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. Our CBD is made from hemp and has 0.003 THC, which means this wonderful product won't get you high, no matter what amount you take. What does CBD do for the body? My hands are tied. But you can Google CBD benefits and be astounded. When you're finished reading, you'll want to log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com and purchase. Life is good when you feel good. People are tired of pain. People are asking for non-GMO organic products to help them with you fill in the blank. Legal in 49 states, and again, our CBD is made from hemp. Ancient Life Oil is about helping people one by one by one. If you wonder how good the product is, the CEO takes it every day without miss. AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Have a great day.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA Digital Broadcast Station.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. Well,
Yes. We are of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier.
And I'm Ari Gold.
We're the Honey Brothers.
And you're listening to Jimmy Church.
The Revolution.
Reclaim your active lifestyle with Angioprim. Angioprim is the original liquid oral chelation supplement. Chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in your veins and arteries that can cause blockages. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. Find out more. Go to angioprim.com. Talk to a trained consultant by calling Angioprim toll-free 877-882-7221.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and you can become an official Fadernaut by just going to our membership section at jimmychurchradio.com.
Hey, it's Grace. Can we talk about something serious for a minute? Your age. Getting old has its perks. But remember, being a few years younger, you know, your hair was thicker, you didn't have so many wrinkles, that extra weight wasn't haunting you, and you just felt better. Well, we can't turn back the clocks and go back 10 or 15 years, but you can start feeling and looking 10 or 15 years younger with Nature's Youth RSF. It's a doctor-formulated daily supplement that helps your body maintain its peak performance and fight the aging process. Imagine sleeping better, looking better, and feeling better. See how Nature's Youth RSF has helped thousands of people just like you at nature'syouth.com. nature'syouth.com. Imagine how it will feel when your family and friends are asking you what you did to look so good. Your secret will be Nature's Youth RSF. It's time to start looking better and feeling better. Learn more and order your Nature's Youth RSF at nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com. That's nature'syouth.com.
Hello, this is Serena Wright Taylor from Conscious Life Expo, and you're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church, who holds the Lucky Pony record for the best astrological chart since 1963. True story.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. All of your questions tonight for John Burroughs. Use the hashtag F2BQ. And I see your questions lining up right here. Very interesting where you guys are going in this direction. And I like what you guys are doing. Hashtag F2BQ. Post your questions right there. And our guest tonight is John Burroughs, and I've called this show The Last Word on Rendlesham. I doubt that there will ever be a last word. And John, our last show that we did a year ago, I thought, it was an excellent show. I think that, we just got everything out, and that would be it. And it's like a reference book. It's reference material for everybody. If you got any questions, go listen to that show. And I think John presented it fair and balanced, and it was an excellent show. And here we are a year later talking about it again, and we've got so many different things that are breaking right now on Rendlesham. Now, what I wanted to ask you was this. The electricity in the air that you were describing, I can imagine almost like you're at a rock concert, and it's the anticipation of the band hitting the stage. It's this thing, that is there. Were you at any point, you guys thought that there was a possibility that this was a downed aircraft? You've got UFO now being mentioned on the radios. Did that change the dynamic of everything? Was the excitement level starting to go up a little bit as the band was about to hit the stage?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for Peniston or Cabansack, but for me, I just, what is it? What are we going to find out there? The aircraft coming down was just the theory they used, that, you had radar contact, something disappeared. You can see something in the forest. So we're going to go see. But the UFO thing is, UFO is, the terminology always immediately is an alien or whatever. Just really what UFO is, unidentified flying object. You just don't want that labeled because people immediately think there's something more to it. But No, it was just like, let's go see, and we all jumped in the truck and we took off down towards the forest, into the forest where we were seeing the lights.
Who was in the truck?
It was Peniston. It was a guy, his first night ever working. First, he just came in the Air Force, first base, first night working, Airman Kabansak and myself.
So it's the three of you.
Right.
Are you armed?
Well, there's been a lot of discrepancies over the years, and Kabansak has stated in interviews that I was armed. Now, one of the things that I remember, both in my hypnosis and actually when we were getting close to it, Peniston did yell at me because he was in front of me to, pull out my revolver and, open up on it. He was closest to it of the three of us. I was in the middle. We were like in a line stagger formation. And Kabansak said that I drew my weapon, and then we all blacked out.
Okay, we'll get to that. I don't want to get ahead of our skis here. But so at this point, you don't remember if the three of you were armed. And the reason is... I
remember...
If you're
the weapon over to Steffens.
That's right.
I don't believe I was armed. No.
Okay, because if you're off base, if you're on the other side of the fence, are you allowed to carry sidearms?
Well, that was status force agreement. We could go between bases with our weapons, but if we went off base, it had to be an immediate threat to go off base in the first place and to be armed and maybe have any kind of engagement. So that didn't fit the criteria. So that's why what I remember was, I know they didn't take their 16s with them. And I remember I thought I turned my 38 over to Steffens too, but Kabansak and Peniston both believe I was armed. So there's a discrepancy right there from the beginning.
Okay. So you guys are tooling up the road. You stop, you get out. What happens next?
Well, we went down the road. We went into the forest down a service track road, and we went as far as we could before we couldn't go any farther in the vehicle with the terrain. And we jumped out of the vehicle. And now this is like, Ed's never said a lot. He did one major interview with James Fox, but there's a lot of memory issues on certain things from myself from both nights. But what I remember is this: we got out of the vehicle, we were going into the forest. It was definitely back farther in the forest now. You know what I mean? In other words, whatever the main thing was that we eventually got to was deeper in the forest, but there was still a white light in the forest. But we were tracking where the source of the light was as we were going into the forest in the vehicle. Then we got out of the vehicle and started to go in on foot, like in a line stagger formation towards the area where we thought the object, or I call it object because what else can you call it? It ended up being what it looked like lights to me, but we were heading towards where the lights were.
Any guesstimate at this point how far you thought you were going to walk? Forests are deceiving, especially at night and in the dark, but what were you thinking how far you were about to walk?
Everything changed. I mean, normally if you're like, on a football field or a basketball court or whatever, you kind of take a look at it, you sum up what you're going to do. This was like, boom, we're going, we got in the truck, we're seeing it, we're talking, as far as like talking a little bit, obviously, what are we going to do? What's this like that? And just focused in on it. So no really idea how far it was into the forest once we got out, or how far we were going to have to go. We just were heading towards whatever this was.
I know I've asked you this before, but before this night, had you walked through the forest? Had you ever just done a leisurely stroll?
No. There were two exercises, one that I completely forgot about that happened prior to our incident, and then there was one after the incident. And the one prior, and it's funny because the SAS stuff came up, we were actually involved in exercises with British Special Forces and military, and we were conducting exercises in the woods and around the old Woodbridge WSA. So I was in the forest prior to this for an exercise on one occasion.
Did it help you? Did you have any idea where you were walking to?
No, not at all. No, not at all.
Okay, so you guys are walking towards this object.
Well, we weren't really walking. We were moving at a high rate of speed. And when you got into the thick forest area, you had to slow down, but you would still be like at least a fast walk or, as much as you could go. So we were moving pretty good.
Okay, so you're on a good clip. What's the conversation?
Well, there wasn't a lot once we got out and started going towards it, other than just like, there it is, or over there, or, it was just kind of a quick boom. And then Peniston had the radio and was trying to, convey what was going on with CSC as we were moving towards it. If you read Baran's statement in, I believe Chandler's too, he mentions it, but I know at least one of them at one point, we seemed to we thought we were up on it, and then it was behind us. That's what the statement said. They said when we were calling in on the radio, but it wasn't a lot of talking going on. It was just moving towards it as quickly as possible so we could identify what it was.
And Peniston had the radio. Is that because he was the sergeant?
Yeah, he was in charge.
Okay, you didn't have a radio.
I don't believe I did. I might have had. I think. It's hard to remember for sure. I may have had my radio with me too. I think maybe all three of us did. But if we did, he would have been the one being on the radio, not us.
And do you remember the object being behind you?
No, I don't.
It was always in front of you.
I always remember it was in front of us, and then all of a sudden we came up upon it.
Okay. What happens next?
Well, we got to an area, it was like berms or kind of hilly, and it was like as you kind of went up the hill, it was the light was in front, and as we came up to the top of the berm, there whatever it was, and we went down the berm, and it was right in front of us. It was like everything got really bright. We all hit the ground, and then what I remember was it dimmed for briefly, and then got really bright again and was gone. Backed up and went out, towards the coast.
Okay, this is a pretty serious moment here. I mean, it's just about as serious as it gets. And let's break this down. So I know you guys are all, like you said, you guys are now on the ground, and this object is in front of you. Were you? I want to know exactly what you saw. Were you averting your eyes, or did you have an opportunity to just take it all in?
Well, it was really bright,
right.
So it was really hard to see anything. And when it dimmed down, okay, and this is where the memory issue comes in. I wrote about the first night. I didn't write about the third night, the statement. They didn't really want me to say much about the third night in my statement, but they had me write a brief summary of what happened on the first night, and then I drew as best I could. And what I drew and what I, the best I could describe it was like an oval orangish ball with blue lights around it, and there was a whitish or orangish hue that was around the orange ball. And that's the best that I can, that I saw for sure on the first night, and it was basically quite about the same as what I remember seeing on the third night, other than there was a bigger dome or a hue on the third night than there was on the first night.
Now, when was there a conversation between you and Captain Sag and Peniston?
When it happened?
Yeah, when you guys
hit
the ground.
We just hit the ground. That's what I remember. And then it disappeared. It went up and, was gone, or back towards the coast, headed towards the coast. And then we got back up and we went out into, across the fence line from the forest into the farmer's field and started heading out towards the coast, towards, the direction it went. And we did see down towards the cottages and stuff, we saw something down there briefly. And then we went down to there, and then we went farther out, went to another field and went farther out.
So when, and I want you to just get into the zone with me right here. When you say that it took off, did you see the underside of the craft? Did you see anything that would take you off planet in your mind's eye?
No, there was no like a craft to me. There was no, it wasn't like that. It would have just been like maybe the oval orangish light itself. It just seemed like, the white light, bright, dim, bright up. And so whatever the contraption was, or whatever it was within the white light and the dome, or whatever you want to call it, it just seemed to go up and then shoot out, away from us.
So the angular aspect of Rendlesham was not revealed on night one that you can remember?
No, there was no discussion of that ever. I mean, the triangular stuff never came up at all that I remember, nor did because Peniston has a completely different account of what took place.
Yes.
And at that point we never discussed that, or do I remember ever, going over that with him the whole time. And, his statement that was released it doesn't say anything about it. And it wasn't until the 90s when he started getting into the triangular part, the glyphs and everything else, and the notebook. And, going forward, he expanded everything that he remembered or he said happened to him, going forward. But it was much later than what went on, what I remember him talking about and what took place at the time.
Were you guys time stamping?
You mean keeping track of the time?
Yep.
We didn't totally really until the end when we got back, and our watches were 45 minutes behind what the real time was.
With everybody else, like Steffens and everybody that was back.
Yeah, well,
at the
it was
gate.
like, what time is it? And, they said, well, this time. And then we looked at our watches, and it was like, it's kind of like one of those simultaneous things, like, whoa, we're behind, it's because it was kind of like it seemed like it was later than it was, and we just wanted to confirm. And there was a 45-minute difference.
So what you are suggesting here, I know that you've had regression therapy and stuff, but at this point, were you guys feeling like you were missing time?
Not really. I mean, we didn't. It's hard to explain to people that at that time frame in life, it's a lot different than today with social media, all the stuff that's taken place. First of all, UFOs was a taboo. You didn't want to be exposed to, Mm-hmm. Second of all, the technology that we saw or whatever we saw took place in our minds, it was hard to say, well, there's nothing that I know about in the military or seen or anything. So we were just trying to, what I remember was correlate and remember how could we figure out how are we going to explain this?
And what
are we going to report?
Exactly. So when you guys get up off of the ground, this light now has ascended and takes off. What did you guys say to each other? Obviously, you had a conversation.
Well, that's where the whole discrepancies start, besides the fact that, he said over the years different things took place prior to it leaving. But he makes it sound...
You're talking about Peniston.
Yeah, before we got close to it, Kabansek wasn't even with us, and he was. And I've talked to Ed about that. He was with us the whole time. We all went forward even further. And if you look at Kabansek's statement, he even says we did. We got close to it, and then we went out and went towards the coast towards it. But Peniston sticks to the story that Ed never was with us he left him right at the vehicle, which isn't what happened. And then Peniston's story is different about what happened when we got close to it. And then he does then go back to kind of saying that him and I went further out, but Ed wasn't with us. So, but what I remember was when it went away towards out towards, the coast, we got up and started going towards it, and we just kept trying to figure out what it was, even how could something do that? How could it be in the trees, move kind of in the trees, then go up and leave? And what? You know what I mean?
And it was Ed Kabansak that said that you drew your sidearm on this craft. And when he says that this happened, was this when you guys were laying on the ground facing?
When we got up close to it, yeah, he says in a Fox interview, and it was a documentary, I believe it was called I Know What I Saw. He said in the interview, he said, we got close to it. And then I remember Penniston yelling at me to, draw on it. And then he said I did. And then all of us just blacked out. That's what he remembers.
That all of you blacked out. And could that?
Yeah, it took us out. It was like, it knocked us out.
Could that have been that 45-minute period?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I remember when we got back there, I remember some of the conversation with the people that were there back where our vehicle was and up by the gate, and they were concerned and that they lost radio contact with us for over 45 minutes, and they wanted to know what happened. So I really honestly don't know exactly where the 45 minutes comes into play overall, other than they said that they lost radio contact with us for 45 minutes.
Now, at this point, are you now at the holy crap point of your frame of mind?
Oh, from the moment we got close to it and
Yeah.
it did what it did and then went out to the coast, then yeah. I mean, that's when everything changed. I mean, it was like, well, wait a minute, it's not an aircraft. And, well, no, not as far as I know. And I was young in the Air Force. Penn had been around longer. But it was like, well, there's nothing that I know that can do this. And how do you explain this? And where did it just go? And what's going on? And let's see if we can get a better idea. And then when we finally couldn't and we came back, how are we going to explain this? It's kind of like, oh shit,
Yeah, I know. I wish I was there. So bad. Okay, so now back to originally when you guys were outside of Eastgate and you could see the light in the forest. You leave Steffens behind. And now you guys are back with everybody. I'm sure that, there are more people there now at this point. Did they see the light ascend? What were they reporting?
Well, now, according to Penniston, and because, what I remember was we got back up, we started meeting up with these people, and it's kind of like, well, thank God there's NCOs. Because I was a young airman, and I'm not going to say nothing. He can explain this. You know what I mean?
Right.
He was the one in charge. He took us out there, let him talk to the security flight chief, and let him do the talking. Because I really don't want to say much, and I don't know what to say or how to say it. So there was some questioning. He claims that Chandler saw some things, and there were some things that people saw happen. Under my hypnosis, it goes further to say that they saw some strange things out in the area where they thought we were, and even some lighting and stuff in the sky. So, yeah, there was some conversation going on, but again, most of that had to do with what Penniston was talking to them about. I didn't say much. I was kind of like, well, okay. I'm glad I don't have to say much right now. I'm glad I'm not the one having to explain this.
Right. I can only imagine how tense the situation must have been. And you guys at this point, pack it up and you come back. Oh, I don't know if you do. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But you guys return at daybreak, the United States Air Force, and go out to the site and investigate, right? Is that the timing of everything?
Well, yeah, we the rest of the shift, there wasn't much time left. We got relieved a little bit later than normal that day anyway, and we got back. We saw the shift commander. We told him what we saw, or again, mostly I said a couple things with Penniston again. He was in charge. Let him talk about it. Let him explain it. And so then the decision was made because we were going to head back home because we all lived down in the same area. I rode back and forth to work with them. We went back out to the area to take a look at the area, and when we got back out there, there was some marks in the ground, some damage to the trees, some tree limbs from above and the canopy that were down. And you're kind of like looking around and like, oh, now it's daytime and there's something there on top of what we saw. So what was there? And, that's kind of what took place. It's like, okay. We just went out there and there was nothing there. And I'm like, well, I don't know. But then there was some damage and stuff there that, like, well, it looks like something was there, you know?
Now, would you call this officially, this is still the 26th?
Yeah, it would have been about, I think, like 0800, 0830 in the morning on the 26th, yeah.
Because when we get to the evening that night, which is the day that's in between the 26th and the 28th, there is a lot of reports of things also happening on the evening of the 27th, correct?
Well, yeah, the night of the 26th, which would have been Friday night, the D Flight took over from swings. They'd worked swings 3 days, and they were on mids. And overnight from the 2300 on the 26th into the morning of the 27th, there was an incident that took place. And when I went home and I was off, in the middle of the night, I woke up over like early morning, like around 4:30, and I felt like something strange may have happened again. So I got up and went up to the base. I live downtown. And when I got up to the desk, it was before they got off, and the desk sergeant, I knew him, and he says, "You're not going to believe this, but something happened again tonight." And he told me a little bit about what went on. And that was kind of kept quiet over the years until a few years ago, Halt did confirm that something strange did happen on the second night.
And we need to take a break right here, but I want a quick answer out of you. Why do you think that something as basic as trying to remember if you were armed or not, or your sidearms, is so difficult to recall when everything else is so vivid? Why do you think that is?
Well, if you go into Project Condign, which was, a report that they did in the UK, and it mentioned Rendlesham in it, it would have to do somewhat partly with whatever we encountered could affect how we saw it and what we remember.
Right.
And then there's also, I don't ever remember being interrogated, but different people said they were. There could have been something having to do with what they did to us afterwards.
Got you. Okay, let's take a break right here. Our guest tonight, John Burroughs. We're going to do it. We're going to put a fork in Rendlesham tonight. Tonight is The Last Word with John Burroughs. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numana products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numana pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numana banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously. Go Beckley Tappy. Do you want to be an official Fadernaut? Of course you do. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black. Just go to our membership section at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
If you have hard water, the lime scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate lime scale and other water issues like brown staining and bad odors with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable water systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight is John Burroughs, and we are putting a fork in Rendlesham. We're going to try to. Tomorrow night, Paula Harris is here. Thursday night is another Fader night. Friday, I will be at the NAMM show down at the Anaheim Convention Center in Anaheim. And Saturday night, I'll be over at Coast to Coast AM, and my guests will be Carolyn Ford and Eric Von Daniken. But tonight, it's all about John Burroughs. All right, John. I've got a lot of questions lined up here. I've got a lot of stuff that we need to get to for the audience. So before we get to that, let's get straight to night 3. Okay, so officially you weren't part of anything that would have happened on night 2. So let's move to night 3. I want your perspective, your eyewitness thing on all of this. How did your day start out? Did you have any crazy dreams, by the way?
You mean during that time frame?
Yeah.
No. Other than just I kind of woke up at about 4:30 in the morning on the morning of the 27th and felt like something happened and went up to the base, which would have been Saturday, and found out something did happen. So to, cut to the chase on that, after that happened, I went over to the dorm, met up with a couple guys I work with, that wanted to do the NIR stuff, and said, you're not going to believe this, but more stuff happened. So we kind of decided that, we do different things during the day. I stayed up on the base. And what would happen to be that night, after it got dark, the three of us would just go out into the forest, low key. We figured go out there, park out there, hang out, see if we could figure something out. And when we got
civvies?
Yeah, we were off duty. Yeah.
Yeah.
And,
okay.
So we went out there, and it already started. They'd had more activity that night earlier around, I think it started about 2100, between 2000 and 2100. Didn't know the whole story till a few years later exactly how it all went down, but basically Colonel Halt was in the middle of it. They had a team out there in the forest. I found out when we came into the gate, when we were going to go out there, that something was going on. We got down to the east gate, and then we eventually got down to a staging area, and then eventually met up with Halt. And then at that point had a conversation with him, and then in the distance, something strange started coming down out of the sky into the trees in front of us. And that's when he let Adrian Bustinza and I go forward to see what that was and how close to that what we were looking at there was to the first night of what happened to us.
Okay, I'm going to ask you 3 questions back to back, and all I want is a yes or no answer, okay?
Okay.
Night 1, 26th, did you see Larry Warren?
No.
Night 2, day 2, on the base anywhere, did you see Larry Warren?
No.
Day 3, you're out there with Halt, and Bestenza's there too as well. Did you see Larry Warren?
No.
Okay. All right, so let's move on. I mentioned civvies earlier. What I mean to the audience, that he was wearing civilian clothes. He wasn't in uniform. Sorry about the vernacular, everybody, but John understood what I was saying. Night 3 with Bestenza and you. Now you're back in uniform. You're on duty?
No, I was off duty on night 3. Night 2, I wasn't out there. I just found out about it when I went up to the base in the morning. Night 3 is when me and a couple guys I worked with went out there to see if we could figure out, what went on the first night and what maybe went on the second night. So we were all off duty in civilian clothes.
Okay, on night 3. What I meant about day 2, you were off duty. You were in.
I wasn't even present. I just got a quick briefing from the desk sergeant that the shift commander went out there and they had some kind of incident take place. She got really upset. They had to relieve her of duty. And in fact, she would have been the one that should have been the shift commander on night 3, but she wasn't there. Lieutenant England, who was the B flight shift commander, stayed over and was the one that was involved with D flight on night 3.
Yeah, that's one of the questions that was posted by our audience. And let me get to that since we're actually on it. About this woman security officer that was freaking out. What do we know about that now?
Well, I can tell you what I was told, and I can tell you what I've been told recently, which is interesting. That something happened, and she actually had a blue light or something go through her vehicle, and it shut it down. We know we've done interviews with airman that was on duty. She confirmed that she could hear the lieutenant and Master Sergeant Ball in the forest investigating whatever it was on night 2, and she seemed to be, upset and kind of freaking out. And that after this light went through her vehicle, then it shut it off. They actually pulled her and relieved her of duty. And Halt later has now said that she immediately was taken away from the base within a couple of days and, was PCS'd out of there. So I don't remember seeing her much afterwards. Her name was Lieutenant Tamplin, but I can't confirm that she was immediately left the base right after the incident. But someone else has come forward and said that not only did she have the encounter, but she actually may have fired a couple shots at it while she was out there.
Has anybody reached out to her?
Yeah, they've tried to track her down. I've had somebody working on it for a while back in 10, and the closest we got to finding her was she's somewhere off grid in Italy.
You would think that, she probably doesn't want the notoriety, and I can understand that. That's a life-changing thing for anybody. But do you think that's the reason why? She's fully aware. Certainly she knows that, we're speaking about her right now, right? Somebody out there knows her and would mention something to her.
Right. I'm sure she knows she's been brought up in discussion. I think Colonel Halt was trying to track her down pretty hard too.
Right.
And I don't believe he could ever get to her. I think we got to a family member. I know we did ourselves personally, and we reached out through the family member, and she said she wasn't interested in talking about it. And then also England is the other guy that was out there has never talked about it. The closest was when Chuck DeCaro found him and tried to talk to him, and he threw him off the base.
Chuck DeCaro of CNN.
Right. He got thrown off the base.
Right.
Where he was at, yeah.
Okay, so let's get back to the moment here. So it's you, Halt, Bestenza, and who else?
Well, England I remember clearly, and Ball. Neville's was there. It's on the tape, but I don't remember Neville's. and I didn't know who he was at the time, but I knew who Sergeant Ball was. I knew who England was. I didn't know who Bustinza was, but, I was able to identify him after the fact, who put a name to the face. But so those were the main people that not only, that I remember, but are on the tape that Halt made. So those guys were on there. There may have been one or two other people out there that's never been totally identified to this day for sure who they were.
When you go back, I've listened to that tape literally 100 times, if not more, like everybody else, and I'm sure yourself included. How accurate is Halt's narration to your memory?
Well, that's a great question, because Halt has never been honest about what happened to Adrian and I. And for the longest time, he denied Georgina Bruni, when he worked with her, that Bustinza was involved, even though that they had tracked Bustinza down, Fawcett and Greenwood, and interviewed him, and Warren and Robbins had found him. And Halt denied that Bustinza was involved, and even to Bruni. And Bruni had the tape. The tape that originally was released was not very good, and she had it cleaned up, and that's when everything started coming out. You could hear clearly names, and my name's on it, and everything. So he denied that Adrian was out there or I was out there. And it's taken about 37 years to where now he said that Bustinza never left his side, which isn't true. Adrian was doing different things. You can hear that on the tape. And he's finally admitted that I did meet up with this party and that Adrian and I did go forward. But it took over 37 years for that to come forward.
I can't remember my conversations with Charles Halt about that. I wish I would be able to comment, but I can't. Okay, so now you guys head into the woods, and at this point, I don't even know if you're aware that at this point that Charles had his little recorder on him.
Well, when I met up with him, yes, we met up with him. When I met up to him, not in my hypnosis, but I remember he had his radio, he had the recorder. He told me, he was talking to the command post. His call sign was Stopper. And he also had the audio cassette that he said he was recording. He's pointed out some blue lights. But here's something that has just recently came out that I wasn't even aware of. But Nick Redford did some FOIA. And what's interesting is if you go on the tape, there's a 0300 to 400. And 0300 about 320, 325, a bunch of stuff went on. But then it kind of goes dead from 0330 to 4, and then he says we return to the base. Well, what took place with Adrian and I was between about 0320 and 4. Now, Redfern did a FOIA, and the British admitted in the FOIA that at 0320, the Bentwaters Command Post contacted Eastern Radar and said they had a UFO incident in progress, and that the command post wanted verification of whether or not there was any kind of radar contact. And the FOIA then comes back and says basically those tapes have been destroyed, so therefore they cannot confirm what was or wasn't on radar during the incident.
In a strange way, when you get that kind of confirmation, it just freaks you out even further. I mean, I think that all of us want this to be what it is, right? An actual UFO experience and encounter. And then on the other side, we don't want that, right? It's like, wait a minute, maybe we don't actually want this to be what it is. But when you get the verification, it's a pretty frightening thing that it is what it is. It is what we are all, fearing and hoping for at the same time.
Right. Right. And that was when Adrian and I went forward, Halt and his team behind us saw something happen to us. And Halt, from that point going forward, has never wanted to publicly talk about, or even for the longest time admit that we were even involved. But when Bustinza's name's on the tape, my name's on the tape, and then an interview Robbins did with Halt where he slipped up and admitted I went forward, it kind of forced his hand. But his latest thing is simply, well, I could see him go forward. Nothing appeared to happen to him. Not saying it didn't, but when they came back, they didn't really say anything. So I don't know what to make of it. So So he's covered that up, and I've got emails from him where he said he's actually towards some of them. He says, "I'm done trying to cover for you." So he's kind of even implied that he's tried to keep that part of the story quiet or didn't want it brought into the whole thing.
Now, let's get back to the tape. What Halt is describing as you guys are walking through the forest, and is, because he's painting a very good visual picture. Right, the blinking eye, the movement, the sparks.
Right.
It's moving inside of the trees. Oh, it moved again. Pretty frightening play by play. Let me break some of this down. As you guys were moving, I think the first thing that Halt brings up, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is the blinking eye. Did you see the blinking eye?
No, I was not with Colonel Halt. At all up until we met as he was coming back from some of what took place on the tape. And I met up with him at that point. So all the stuff that went on where he talks about the blinking eye, molten, here it comes from the south, there's a beam of light coming down at our feet and all that. I was not involved in any of that.
So you didn't see the beam of light come to the ground?
No, but what's interesting was, I've said this for years, that right before we met up with him, there was a blue light that came from their direction. It shot right at us, and there was a staging area with light alls. It came at us, went over the top of us, it went past the light alls, and they lit up, and it went through the pickup truck back by the light alls, and then shot back up into the sky.
Oh, man. And so was there hooping and hollering? Was anybody screaming? Was there anything, not screaming in terror, but... there's a lot of activity going on in the forest right now. What was that like?
There was nothing that I can remember of anybody freaking out or anything other than what I remember, and it's more from my hypnosis than my memory, other than it jarred it a little bit, was they all looked really weird. The whole team looked weird, but two of them. Halt himself didn't seem too worked up about it. And England was like, being England, he was an ex-Marine, was kind of like, he was armed. He had a weapon with him. And he was like, he wasn't freaked out. He was kind of like jazzed by it and just said we were armed and blah, blah, blah. But everybody else was kind of like, they had to look probably like we did the first night,
Okay. Back to your part of this, you and Adrian Bustinza. What happens next?
Well, he let us go forward. I didn't have a radio. Adrian did. It seemed like the object, whatever it was in the trees, hovering above the trees, started to come down and towards us. We were running towards it. He was to my right, and we had a brief radio transmission with the tower saying, whatever it is seems to be getting close to us. Can we continue? And they said, go for it. And then at that point, Adrian went down to the ground, and he said that he felt like something pushed him down and held him down. And as he went down to the ground, whatever it was, he said, came over the top of me. And I remember getting close to it. And that's all I remember until it was gone and was standing there. And he said, I phased away. I disappeared. And part of it touched him, and he's had some health issues from that. And I phased out, and I was gone for a while, and I was back. Then the object, as I came back, went up and disappeared. And he did also say that at that point, when I went into it and I phased away, it appeared to take a triangular shape.
So he is describing, and I've heard him say this, but I want you to be very clear for the audience for tonight's show, that he was watching you. You phased.
Yeah, like he described, the best way he could describe it was that like what you see on Star Trek where, they beam away.
Right.
That's what he said happened to me.
And were you watching Adrian?
No, as I saw him kind of out of my peripheral vision go down, I kept going. And it seemed like I was there. It was, and then the next thing I know, I'm looking, and there he is on the ground. I turned around, and looked back, or I was staring at him. I can't ever really remember if I was staring out, looking at where I was heading forward, or if I was, when I came and realized what was going on, I was looking back at him. But eventually I saw him on the ground, and he got up, and and then it was kind of like looking at each other, and that was about it. And then neither one of us remember anything from that point going back.
How close were you to the object?
According to him, I went into it. I was pretty close to it, not very far from it.
Okay, the last thing that you remember, what was that?
Just that the light was coming at us, and it was an orangish hue, light kind of, and it that it was like, what is it? And I'm trying to get to it, and then bam, it's gone.
The distance at that point, to the best of your recollection, what are we talking about here? Was it yards? Was it 50 feet? How close was the last thing?
I've never really tried to totally give you exact distance, but I was close. It was like we were almost on it. It felt like, or there it was. It was coming towards us. We were going towards it, and it was almost like I was on it. And then, like I said, all of a sudden, it seemed like it was gone. So it would have been yards.
So
the best I could tell you.
What a crazy moment this is, and at that moment where Busenza says that you phase out, right? He's been affected by this exterior force that is either knocked him to the ground and is holding him to the ground, but that's going on at that moment. And the phasing that Adrian is describing here, is that what you would have to suppose at this moment, but that's the period of you coming back to, and the object is gone. Am I understanding everything correctly?
Well, no, he made it sound like he saw me phase out and was gone, and then I phased back in.
That's what I mean. So when you phased in, the object was gone.
Then the object disappeared, right? It kind of like I came back in, and then it shot away.
Okay. When you say that it shot away, was this up?
He never really said. I don't remember any of it. He just said it seemed like when I reappeared, then the object disappeared.
Well,
I never really gotten to the point of what the object did.
You mentioned at that point, this is, I'm quoting you, you said at that point there was a triangular shape, right?
He said it looked like it took a triangle shape, yes, at one point.
Okay, but you yourself don't remember that.
No, like I said, both times. First time, got close to something, boom, it was gone. Second time, got close to something, boom, it was gone.
And when you think about this now, and you have to understand, even for myself, John, this is pretty fantastical stuff. This is hard to wrap your mind around. And everybody knows there's multiple witnesses to what is going on. And this phenomenal, I just stole your radio. You should call your show Phenomenon Radio, by the way. I think that'd be a good name. This phenomenal event is going down, but really, you don't remember the exact moment. It's Adrian that witnessed it.
Right. And in the same way on the first night, Peniston said that, the object was over me at one point. He hinted at one point I may have disappeared for a while. So both times, and I've been ridiculed for that, but I'm honest. I do not know what happened. I can only go on what people said they saw happened. And that's the way I've always been. I got close to something and then it was gone. And I do not know what took place other than what other people said they saw. And then obviously some of my hypnosis paints a bigger picture. So
what happened next?
Well, again, like I said, we started going back, and neither Adrian and I really remember much from the point we turn around to go back until he remembers the next morning and I remember the next afternoon. So we don't remember anything from that point.
With the Halt memo, which I'm looking at the clock here, we got about 3 minutes. With the Halt memo, Halt's got to write this up, right? And Halt writes up the memo. I think he writes it up on the 27th. Right.
Well, I'd have to look at the memo on the date, but it was a week or two after the event. Yeah, he was told to write something up and sent to the MOD.
Right. So he had to backdate all of this. In other words, he didn't write the memo as the day that it happened is what I'm referencing here.
Right. He wrote it afterwards, as far as what was officially has been released. Yes.
So when the conversation goes down with you and Halts. What did you tell him?
Well, when we went in, it was like the Tuesday. When we came back to duty on Monday, was told to write a statement. It was hinted before I went on break, but I didn't do it. And then Monday we were told to write it up. So I did. And we went in Tuesday before we went to work, what I remember. And we met with Halt first, handed statements to him. Then we all went in and saw Conrad. And then we went and saw the old man, is what they call the wing commander. And it was brief with both of them. And Peniston was the NCO, so he reported to him. And, there wasn't a lot that I had involvement with Halt or Conrad or Williams at the time. I was an airman, and it wasn't my place, other than was basically told was that they were looking into this and that they would get back to me if they needed anything, and otherwise I was to stay quiet about it. And that was the gist of what happened with me.
Did Conrad, forget about Halt for a second, and we're going to be headed towards a break, but did Conrad suggest anything to you to put in your statement to alter the event?
No, nobody did. They just told me to write it. The only thing they did say was they wanted me to write. They weren't. I was off duty on the third night, and it was like they wanted a statement from me on what took place from what we initially saw and what going forward into going out off base. And that was all they wanted. I said, well, there's a lot to talk about over 3 days. And they said, don't worry about the other stuff. Just write up what, started the whole thing. That's what we want. And I did. And then I turned it in, and they never challenged me or told me what the writers say until years later. That's when the whole thing broke. And that's when the Pentagon called me, and that whole thing took a twist and turn. So.
Yeah, I find that part very interesting, John. We got to take a break right here. In that they didn't ask you to alter, but they didn't want you to comment about night 2 or 3. They only wanted the official aspect of it when you were on patrol. That's what they were interested in.
Well, they didn't even really know I knew about night 2, I don't think. But they didn't want me to talk about night 3. Yes, they definitely did not want me to talk about night 3.
Very interesting. Let's take a break right here. John Burroughs is our guest. We're putting a fork in Rendlesham. I've got a whole list of questions. We're going to go through all of that and try to get it all done when we come back. I made a promise. I'm going to stick by it. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black. We'll be right back.
Hi, everybody. This is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
This is KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Salt Lake City, Utah. Van Buren, Arkansas.
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Your contact for current news and trending topics. KGRARadio.com.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out. That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants
mountains.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-717-WAVE, 888-717-WAVE, or visit dryhealthyhome.com. dryhealthyhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I only drink Fade to Black blend coffee from River Moon. Just click on the River Moon Coffee banner at jimmychurchradio.com. Promo code F2B Blend.
So are you tired of being tired? Well, then it's time to get the tea. Hey, it's Lisa here to tell you about this all-natural, all-organic tea I've been drinking that has had great results for over 20 years. It's called Life Change Tea, and it's specially formulated to help detoxify and cleanse your kidneys, liver, colon, and blood all at once. The colon is one of the most ignored organs in the human body. The faster that waste is eliminated from the body, the less time that waste sits in our intestines, spreading toxins to our bloodstream. This tea helps cleanse chemicals caused by outside intruders from our entire digestive system. And get this, weight loss can be a side effect. And with continued use of the tea, you can experience clearer, healthier, younger looking skin, increased energy, and a happier outlook on life. So if you're tired of being tired, get the Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And like me, you'll be glad you did.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, John Burroughs, attempting to put a fork in Rendlesham. I'm doing my best. Great conversation tonight. Great conversation. Hey, John, what's your Twitter handle?
I don't have one.
You know, Twitter's going to be big. There's a rumor that you might want to jump in, before it blows up.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
I'll keep that in mind.
All right. I have got a ton of questions here. Sure. And now we've done our best tonight for your eyewitness side of things. But everybody's got a ton of questions. Maybe some of this will stir your memories. Also, some of it may not apply, but I'm going to just lay it all out there. And squash rumors too as well. So let's do all of this. This is the first question. Tell us about the physical characteristics of the craft you touched. What were the symbols like? Now, I already know the answer to the question, but please answer.
Well, I didn't touch it. Peniston did, and he's. You can go. It's been put out there what the glyphs look like. What he drew in his notebook. And then when he claims that when he touched the glyphs, then he got a binary download, which he wrote down a couple days or a day and a half later. So none of that happened with me, but but Peniston did say he walked around it, saw the glyphs, touched it, wrote it down in his notebook. So that's the best I can answer that one.
We've got a lot of questions based on this, and I'm going to ask them all. This is from me. The craft now that is at Rendlesham Forest, right? The, what do you want to call it, statue, memorial, what have you. Does that resemble anything that you remember?
No, not me, but they tried to base it off of Peniston's drawings that he put in the statement.
Okay. Next, going back to night one, can John remember, was it near the Field or Burrow Hill where they stumbled into a stream and got wet? I remember you and I talking about this last year. Can John remember if it was on the outward journey or on the way back?
Well, that's the thing. I do remember when we were coming back, I realized that we were wet. The feet were wet and we were wet. In my hypnosis, it goes a little deeper into the fact that we were wet and we really couldn't figure out how we got from where we were to where we were then, and then in the time frame that it took. So Barrow Hill is about 2 miles out, and it's a very interesting place in itself, and the history behind it. And that's where my statement and Kabansak's statement, we got to the top of the hill and looked out to the coast. So there's a lot to that, but exactly when we got wet, I'm not sure.
Could you please ask Mr. Burroughs if he considers the event wholly ET or in some way spiritual as well?
I don't consider it. The best way to put this is this. I'm not sure what it was. There's a guy in the UK that I met and I've become friends with and has done a lot of research on the area by the name of James Warrow. That's done a lot of research on the technology that was going on, the testing was going on. SAP programs were taking place just outside the gate. There was a known phenomenon there. Andrew Pike was a scientist that was working on that aspect of it at the time. Back last year, we did some research with Wynn Keach, who identified some energy fields in there. So there is definitely some kind of phenomena in that forest because stuff still is taking place there to this day. And at the same time, there also was some technology, especially in 1980, and even one of the sites is still there and active today. So there's something that's there, and it very well could have been part of what we encountered, and it also could have been some of our own technology that we were seeing also.
This is via email. Does John Burroughs know why he is not listed in the new Capel Green documentary? And there's a little bit more to this, but I'm going to stop right there.
I declined. I don't want anything to do with that project.
And there's the other part about this incident that we didn't talk about tonight was the craft. Again, we're going into the Larry Warren world, and I'm not concerned about that. But the incident inside of the farmer's field and the craft line. Did you see any of that?
No.
Did anybody else discuss that with you?
What do you mean, the craft itself or whatever?
Yes.
Other than when I found out about Peniston, he kind of divulged a lot of that. He did a little bit of it in Strange But True, where he could see the glyphs, but he never really talked about any of the other stuff at that point. But it wasn't until years later when I met back up with Peniston that he started diving into what he remembered and what happened. So, no, I was never privy to the craft, the notebook, or anything until years later.
And the okay, all right, let's move on. So you declined to be in the film. Okay, let's go to. I'm switching different. I've got 3 different lists of questions here. Going to night 3, when Colonel Halts' party arrived back at the staging post where the light-alls working, did John see them working at any time when he was waiting for Colonel Halts' party to return?
Lidars did not work at all, except when the blue light flew over the top of us by them and they briefly activated. And that's a discrepancy that's come up recently because Colonel Halt has now said that he could see us because the Lidars, were lit up the area. But if you go back earlier in time, he always said, too, the Lidars never worked and they had issues with the Lidars that they never did function. And like I said, I saw them briefly come on and off when the blue light passed over us and by the Lidars.
Briefly, can you tell the audience what a Lidar is?
Lidars is what they used on the flight line to work on aircraft at night, and it was a generator with 2 lights on it. They could raise them up in the air, and they could throw light on aircraft. But we also used them for security, also to light up areas that that were dimly lit. But there were some of them that were brought out to the area, and what I was told was the reason why was they put them in the area where we had our first night encounter to try to light that area up a little bit.
And what was, next question, what was in the farmer's field?
On which night?
I guess this would have been night 3.
That's where Halt, and there's a discrepancy on that. What I mean by discrepancy, we're not so sure that the first farmer's field is where most of it took place, or it's the one where you went past the Kaisers, across the road, went into the second field. And I think some of it did take place in the first farmer's field, and then the second farmer's field was where more activity took place. But that's all explained in the tape itself. He describes it real time. So you need to listen to the tape itself to go into what most of it took place on that night.
Have all of your hypnosis, I'll just read the whole question. Your name is there. I don't need to say it. But is John keeping some of his hypnosis sessions private, or has it all been released?
Oh, no, there's only been a brief clip of the 2 different sessions that took place. And those are pretty stunning. And if you watch them, especially both of them. But the interesting thing on the first one was, what came out was that 2 things that are within the small clip that's been released was it appears that I was able to have a conversation with this after the fact, which some people call channeling, but I had the ability under hypnosis to have an interaction with whatever we dealt with. And that within this interaction, it comes out that what we were seeing was light, but the light itself was energy, and it was the life form itself.
I want to, before I get back to the questions, you had mentioned to me earlier today something that I didn't know about, but that you and your son recently had a DNA test done. And the results are pretty... Now, look, I'm going to tell everybody what my answer, my reaction was to John. My answer was, what? Okay, so briefly, because this is an ongoing situation, what happened with your son's DNA test?
Well, I'll do it as briefly as I can, and I'll give you a summary of the testing that was done. But it all started with the fact that when we did the citizens' hearing, we did a briefing to the ex-members of Congress, including my records were classified, my medical records were classified, my DD Form 214 was altered to say I wasn't in the Air Force when the event took place. And then after this hearing, a guy by the name of Dr. Green showed up and contacted the attorney that was working with us and gave him a briefing, and then came and visited me and Sedona, brought my attorney and his wife out, who was an attorney and a nurse, and gave us a briefing on what they were looking at, what they wanted to do with they were doing a DNA study on other individuals that have had encounters besides myself. And they were going to take, I think it was 100 people. They wanted 100 people that have had different encounters and do a DNA testing on that, on top of the fact that they were also doing a MRI that could show things in the brain that would identify interaction with the phenomenon itself too. So those were the 2 things they were looking at. And when he came out and visited me, and there was another whole story behind that, he wrote a confidential letter to the VA and Department of Defense, and that got me some of the treatment I needed and stuff. And they wanted my DNA for this study, and I turned them down. I just told them no, I wasn't going to do it. I met with Dr. Nolan, who was head of the program and out of Stanford, and Colin Kelleher came down. They tried to get me to give my DNA at this point, and I wouldn't do it. I finally got my surgery. I find out from John Alexander, and I want to be clear about this because people have gone after Dr. Nolan about this. Dr. Nolan never stole my...
Hold on, Gary Nolan.
Yes, Dr. Gary Nolan.
Got it. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Gary Nolan never stole my DNA. He never was involved in it. What John Alexander told me, which I was naive about, was when they did the surgery at the VA, I do have some records that show that they drew some blood from me, that they did a testing on my DNA that way, but they also got tissue. So, all right. So we sum it up. They got my DNA through the VA, through my surgery. Okay. Alexander confirms this. Okay. Then later on, Dr. Green, Kit Green, meets me again, comes and visits me in Illinois, and he talks to me about some other stuff, including some things he wanted me to start working on. But he asked me again for my DNA sample. And at that point, knowing what I already knew, and the fact that I had some evidence that they already had something on me, I told him I would participate in their study. So I gave my DNA for that. But I asked him for a favor, and I said, would you run a DNA sample on my son and I? And the reason is I'm adopted. So we had a general idea because his family, his mother's family tree, and they'd done all that. I had no idea what my heritage is. Mm-hmm. So what happened was he agreed to take our samples of my son's DNA and my DNA and have a lab in Pennsylvania run a test on it. Okay. And what I figured was I get back, I'm Norwegian, I'm this, whatever. And, and I get a sample of what the mixture of his mother's and mine, and we'd have a better idea. And I get a phone call about 3 months later, and I get told that my son's and mine DNA are two of the most unique DNA in history or mankind, right? And I'm like, what? So I get the reports, but what I'll give you is just a brief summary of an analysis. And okay, all right, because they ended up doing a follow-up with his mother's DNA. And this is what I can tell you about what came back. All right. The state of the art on this subject says that John's son has a mother with European heritage, but the heritage is still vaguely identified, England and Belarus, or completely unknown. Okay. Some of the J haplogroup has been found in his Ashkenazi Jew and in ancient Middle Eastern cemeteries as well. But that does not mean that the specific mtDNA profile in the report comes from either heritage. There's another thing. These tests done by forensic labs are usually there to determine paternity, maternity, ancestry, and other requirements of forensic science, so they focus on HRV1 and HRV2. The vast bulk of the genome is usually not tested, as it doesn't show mutations, which makes typing it almost impossible. However, the rest of the genome, and I want to read the rest of this, is the genome known as the coding region may have additional information of interest, and it just says, I just don't know who obtained these databases. So to sum it up, my son is in no database that they can find his DNA. None. His mother has a little bit of heritage, which is most of it's unknown, because mitochondrial DNA and my son is mostly from the mother, though there's studies now saying the father's mixed in too. But she has very little heritage other than it may come from the Middle Eastern and the Jewish end, and it's very rare, and it dates back to ancient times. My DNA, according to them, is very ancient, back to ancient times, and I have all Native American DNA, which at the time when I first was told this, I was like, what? I'm white. But there are studies out there that you could be white but still have all heritage of Native American, or from the other groups over in Africa and stuff like that are all native.
What do you mean when you say, I want to be clear here, that your son has no heritage, your son has no DNA? That doesn't make any sense.
What I mean is he's not in any database.
Wait, that doesn't make any sense. Is he your son?
Yeah, no, he's my son. That's what I mean. They actually confirmed that his mother's the mother, I'm the father.
Right.
But we have two. What they've said to me is that both his mother and I's bloodlines are so rare. What were the odds that we even came together to have a child that created the DNA, his DNA, that's in no database whatsoever?
And so Gary Nolan, could explain something like this, or somebody that knows what they're talking about. I'm certainly not any authority here. But shouldn't his mother, your wife, shouldn't that DNA at the very least be present, that heritage, your heritage, be present in your son's DNA? Or am I missing something here?
Well, that's my question. And what I'm trying to get at is what they're saying is that the mitochondrial in my son from the mother is very vague. And most of it's unidentified. It's not identified in any DNA base. And my son's DNA is in no database. So whatever genetics are in his DNA, there's nothing to compare it to.
How's that possible?
Well, it's very rare.
Is your DNA, has it been altered?
That's one of the questions that you can't get a straight answer on. And what I mean by that is this is what they're working on, supposedly, not just with me, but all the other people have had encounters. They're very vague on whether the damage to the brain is from the encounter or if it's prior to the encounter, which leads to the encounter. They're very vague about what they're looking at overall with the DNA. And what I do know, I don't even want to try to explain because I wouldn't probably do it justice. But
what about your family, John? Do you have brothers, sisters?
I'm adopted. I have no idea. That's why I asked for Green to do it in the first place.
Yeah, I know you're adopted, but I mean, do you have brothers or? I mean, do you know if you have family out there?
I have no idea anything about my family.
Okay,
no. I've never been able to track them down. I've never found anything out about it, and that was the whole purpose of this, was to go. And I didn't know the database was going to be done and stuff, but it was simply what's going to come back on me. So where am I from? And I'm from mostly Africa, from Middle East, in that area. That's what little there is. And I'm in only one database. And they said that's mine. They somehow know that whatever the DNA that they took from me was already been pre-identified, which means somebody else had already tested my DNA, which leads back to probably that's what Alexander told me, was they took my DNA when they did my surgery, and that was in the database.
You know, something smells here. Something's a little stinky, John. And I don't know what it is, but you're adopted. And so somebody with crazy DNA that is adopted is present at one of the craziest UFO incidents in human history. That's way beyond coinkydink here.
Well, no, there's no doubt. There's all kinds of strange things that have happened. Different people I've met, different things that have been presented to me. Just that Dr. Green showed up in the first place. Some of the other people I've met, with the whole thing, the whole study, the whole To the Stars thing, because one of the things that they're talking about that they're going to come out with is, and it has been somewhat released now, that the Harry Reid stuff, really a lot of that funding went towards Skinwalker Ranch itself and the research that went on. And they actually did bring special ops in. Some of those guys had an encounter with what was ever there, and it caused effects on them. There's been other incidents that haven't been made public that are still classified, that guys have been injured by and had weird things happen even afterwards. And that because these guys aren't, out there, and these programs are out there, they're having trouble getting them treatment. So one of their goals is they interviewed me, and they want to put this out, and they want to force Congress, if not publicly all the time necessary with all the things that have happened, but they want to start getting some of these other people treatment and care. And then also some of these people have already died from their encounters.
Now, I'm free to ask whatever I want, right? You can deny, right?
Okay.
Are we clear on that?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to go there right now. It has been alleged that there may have been physical debris retrieved from the incident that may be right now being analyzed by possibly I need your clarification, if you can, to the stars.
Right, and that's the thing that's happening with Through the Stars. When I got contacted and was interviewed, it was supposed to kind of stay quiet, and then they interviewed the lady from McCain's office, and she was allowed to talk about it. And then Elizondo came out and said Rendlesham's going to be a focal point. DeLong released some papers that showed that they had some material from Rendlesham that was being analyzed. Then the stuff I sent you from Ronnie Dugdale that he had given to him, it appears that's been turned over. A sample's been turned over to be analyzed. It's got bismuth in it, which is one of the things that Linda Moulton Howe got from Roswell.
Right.
So there's some stuff there. Now, one of the things that could be the first part was that Gabriel came in, and a team did come in afterwards, and Gabriel came in shortly afterwards and took everything involving Rendlesham, and Hall even said there were samples taken and stuff recovered that he didn't really specify what was recovered other than samples were taken, and that was taken away by Gabriel, so maybe some of that's been turned over.
Is there a chain of command between To the Stars all the way back to Rendlesham with this material that it did come from Rendlesham?
Well, that's another whole story in itself, Jimmy, because Richard Doty's come out and said, because he's tied to Kirkland and that whole incident and some other stuff, and he was OSI, and he's seen the report on Rendlesham, and he's revealed some stuff that he saw in the report that it never was made public that I was aware of. So he's seen something, and he says that no doubt that not only was the NSA involved, but the CIA were involved, and he implicated that Dr. Green was involved from the beginning of Rendlesham going forward based on what was going on. So yeah, there's all kinds of implications. That
you almost just took the wind out of the sails of this entire thing when you bring up Richard Doty. And you know what I'm talking about here. You don't know.
Yeah, it was the disinformation.
Right,
he was
right.
a counter intel guy, yeah.
Right. But he's bringing up Kit Green, involved with Rendlesham from the beginning. CIA and NSA were involved. You almost, with Doty, you got to flip it over 180 degrees, and now you have the truth.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. There's two things about this, though, that are interesting. Number one, he knew about stuff that never had been gone public,
right.
So he knows something.
Right.
And number two, the agents that were involved, he actually had an interaction with them, okay? And Halt confirmed that these agents were there. And they gave me a brief synopsis of what went on. And then when all this hit the fan, this would have been back about 6-7 months ago. Then all of a sudden they came back because I was going to get in and get to meet with them. And they said that the report's now been pulled and is being used and being reviewed by Congress, and that they no longer are allowed to discuss this further with anybody, and that they have had to brief some people inside Congress about the whole incident itself.
Okay, let's take a break right here. We're going to head into overtime. I have another, I don't know how we did it, John. We ran out of time again. I've got 25 or 30 questions here. So we're going to come back. We're going to go rapid fire, okay? And we'll get all of it done. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, John Burroughs, putting a fork in Rendlesham, the last word. This is Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. John Burroughs is not on Twitter, but I am, and you can follow me at JChurch Radio. I'll be right back to finish up the night with John Burroughs. Stay with us.
You are listening to my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Hurricanes, earthquakes, wildfires. This year we've experienced more than our fair share. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and last month I decided to make sure my family does not have to worry about food should we get caught in a real emergency situation. Introducing Numana, a healthy, storable product that tastes so good that you'll want to eat it every day instead of just during those times of duress. All Numanna products have a 25-year shelf life, are MSG and GMO-free, no preservatives, and are made in America. With the Numanna pack in your home, you'll be able to sleep at night knowing that you've protected your family. Not only have I tasted and tested, I own it. Now you can too. Just click on the Numanna banner on JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code Jimmy when you order. In addition to a discount, we'll send you an autographed Fade to Black t-shirt. Seriously, go Beckley Teppy. This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and I take Life Change Tea supplements every single day. It's what I do. Click on their banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. When you take the beans from Central America with dashes of Indonesian and African mixed in and then roasted to the dark side of Fade to Black, you create the ultimate brew of fringe. Introducing the Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Yes, Rivermoon's darkest customized roast was created for the love of Fade to Black. The alchemy of masterful roasting and smoking the beans is in every sip of this full-bodied, dark Java. I need my coffee dark, deep, with distinct bittersweet chocolate highlights, just like the bunker. Leaning further into the darkness of the roast is Fade to Black blend from Rivermoon Coffee. Just click on the banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com and use the promo code F2BBLEND for 15% off of your order today. Go Beckley Teppy.
Hi, folks. CBD is the home run hitter for health right now. Why, you ask? Because of what it does for the body. Unfortunately, I can't tell you all about the benefit. You know, there's reasons. Do your due diligence and log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Ancient Life Oil uses organic ingredients and is blended in coconut oil for some of the best benefits. Legal in 50 states and non-psychoactive. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com.
This is Jimmy Church of Fade to Black, and my family is safe because of Numanna Emergency Food Storage. Just go to the Numanna banner at JimmyChurchRadio.com. Promo code Jimmy10.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
All right, welcome back to Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, John Burroughs, going straight into overtime. And I'm going to get to things as quick as possible. We've got a lot of questions here posted from all of you. I'm getting them via email and Twitter. And so we're going to get straight to it, John. And let's see if we can get through these as quick as possible. Here we go. Next question, I should say. About Rendlesham. Did Colonel Halt ever threaten you as he did during production of the Larry King program?
He's never threatened me, but he's made it clear that he's more along the lines of he wants to protect whatever happened on that third night, and that he also doesn't like the fact that I continue to challenge different things and ask questions. So not directly threaten me, but he's not happy with some of the things that I've uncovered or done. So that's the best way to put that.
And let's see. Next, again, some of these are a little bit repetitive, but, for clarification, let's just do this. Did John see the winking eye light floating and weaving through the forest, and how could that have been faked?
No, I didn't, and it would necessarily didn't have to be faked But again, like I talked about earlier, James Worrow, we've uncovered, James and I've done some research and work, and with others too, that we've uncovered that we actually did have technology even back then that we were working on that could explain some of what we saw and what took place.
Would you please ask John what he saw in his dreams after the experience?
I've never really had any really major dreams about the experience, but others have. Peniston has had problems over the years with dreams. That's why he went under hypnosis. And Adrian Bustinza has had a lot of dreams about it itself.
Okay, let's shift over to night 3. After John's incident where he and Adrian Bustinza were allowed by Colonel Halt to go forward, were there lights flying about at that time?
Yeah, there was the orangish hue that came down, and I do remember again seeing some of the. Well, actually, the first night I didn't really remember the blue lights when we got close to it, but on the third night there was definitely some blue lights around whatever this was.
Did you set off to investigate one of these lights? Remember, I'm reading this as it's typed. Okay, everybody. Mm-hmm. Okay, did they set off to investigate one of these lights as they witnessed descend into the forest, or did they just go to investigate the first night's landing site as Colonel Halt has recently claimed?
Well, Colonel Halt claimed that, yeah, they went out there to look at the other site, but what started the whole thing was when England showed up at the Christmas party and told Conrad and Ziegler that the lights were back again. And that's when Conrad sent Halt, according to Halt, out into the forest to find out what they were seeing that night. And then also part of what they wanted to do was look at the first night.
Yeah, Halt was at the Christmas party too. He had to split. He was told to go and investigate. Okay.
Right.
Let's see. Did John see the light in the field beyond the forest that had allegedly burst into multiple objects that shot into the sky?
Nope, that was Colonel Halt. That was prior to me going out there.
What is John's opinion? This is good, rapid fire, right? What is John's opinion on the binary code that came out many years later? Was it a suppressed memory by Peniston, or was it something else?
The only thing I'm going to say about the binary for now, because they're getting ready to put a book out on this, so I'll let them explain it, is that in the hypnosis back, I think it was in 94, Peniston did go talk about having some kind of binary and being interrogated. And as far as the binary itself, it didn't come out till the 30-year mark, and there's discrepancies on why it didn't come out and all that. So the best thing I would tell them is this: well, if you want to know, read the book and then ask them about the binary, because I have questions and I don't feel totally comfortable with it myself. But at the same time, you can't rule out the fact that under hypnosis, before you ever talk about the binary, it did come out there was binary involved.
Do you have flashbacks today
to the incident?
That's the question. So what is the
no,
question?
Not really.
Yeah,
no,
I mean, what does that kind of question mean to you?
Well, I guess it could be all kinds of things. Do I like have PTSD from it? Do I have dreams issues? And no, I never really had that happen to me like others said they have.
You don't wake up in the middle of the night in a cold sweat pulling
I've woke up covered in sweat and different things like that, but it's not directly tied to me having a dream about what happened that night.
This, the other part about this, what I was going to say was you don't reach into your nightstand for your 9mm, right, for your Glock in a cold sweat. Were you ever checked for radioactivity?
No, that was one of the things that we were curious about from the beginning, was that why we weren't looked at medically according, to what we remember. But then there was an airman that was involved from a different squadron that does remember us being hauled away on the couple different nights, and there was some people there that were checking us, but I don't remember that. But an airman did come forward and say that did take place.
Okay, next up, let's see here. 2222. How far from the staging area did he and Adrian venture, and did any of Colonel Halt's party follow them?
Well, I'm not really sure how far we went, but we went into a pretty good run. So it was probably, 3 or 4 football fields at least. And that's what I'm saying. Halt, I guarantee he would have followed us. He would have saw the object, saw us going towards it. Now, Halt claims he could see us the whole time and he didn't really think anything happened. But there's no doubt he tracked what was going on, and that's what he's been covering forever. Whatever he saw take place with us, he didn't even want to admit we were there, let alone talk about what he saw happen.
Did you ever look over your shoulder? I'm sure that there were flashlights and things that everybody had. Did you ever look over your shoulder to see if you were being followed?
No.
Okay. What is John's recollection? Blah, blah, blah. What is John's recollection of what happened next? Were Colonel Halt's party still at the staging area when you returned?
That's what I said earlier. Adrian and I both don't have much of a memory other than I remember looking back at him. I remember we kind of started heading back, and then we don't have much memory at all of what took place from that point until the next day.
Now, would you call that memory loss then?
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand. I mean, I can remember certain parts of it, or I remember vaguely some, and hypnosis seemed to reinforce it and go into more detail. But yeah, there are gaps. There are gaps that I can't explain. I can remember things that happened to me all through my military career, but one of the most important nights, there are things I just can't remember.
Now, and staying on this before I get back to the questions, when you went home after that, the third night with Bustinza, do your memories pick up from there? Do you remember going to bed? Do you remember taking off your clothes? Do you remember everything solid after that?
Well, on Bustinza's night, the first memory I have was in the early evening. I was standing at the post office, and I watched the C5 come in from Langley, go back to the restricted area, and then I remember going home and then going down to Penniston's house to talk to him about what happened on the Saturday night, and then figure out when we were going to go to work on Monday, what time we were leaving. So I don't have any memory, and neither does Adrian. He does not have very little, if any, memory of what happened from that point going forward.
Next up, I have heard that Colonel Halt was angry that John and his other men might have been messed with by intelligence agents using drugs in a debrief. Jimmy, please ask John if there's any truth to this. If so, is MK Ultra related, perhaps?
Well, okay. The first part is Halt is basically said secondhand stuff about us being debriefed. And that comes from like some of the different things like Warren, Bustinza talked about it. Penniston didn't talk about it until after his hypnosis, because he remembers going into OSI, briefly writing a statement, talking to him about it, and then only in hypnosis did he remember that more things took place. And I've called Halt on that, and he basically, when it got serious with this OSI report supposedly surfacing, and one other thing, Jimmy, I don't know if you're aware of, but I'm not going to be able to tell you who, but there's a second person that was involved in this incident that's got compensation from the Department of Defense for the incident.
And you know this as fact?
Yes, I know this is fact. I was involved in helping that person get it. And that was one of the things that was being asked about based on the evidence that the Department of Defense, remember, this is years later, and even the VA are starting to ask questions about, well, these guys were interrogated. This stuff took place. We need some more answers to what happened. Why did this take place? So they've, based on my settlement, that they said I was injured during the event, and this other person's, they're now starting to ask more questions. To include, they wanted an affidavit from Halt, who refused to give it.
I mentioned earlier in the show the book Sky Crash, A Cosmic Conspiracy. And I believe that book, I could be wrong, this is my memory, but it came out in the mid-'80s. And that was Brenda Butler and Dot Street and, of course, Jenny Randles. And through, I spent so much time researching this, and back then in the mid-90s, I happened to get a copy of the book. And so to that end, it's kind of funny that I mentioned Brenda Butler, and I have some questions from her. Do you want to take a crack at these?
Sure.
Okay. Night one, and this is from Brenda Butler, who co-wrote, along with Jenny Randles and Dot, the original research into Rendlesham, going back to right after the event, actually. This would have been 84, 85. She says, night one, when John witnessed a phenomenon with Jim Peniston and Ed Cabansag, after whatever it was took off, they went in search for it towards the coast, and their pursuit terminated on a hill overlooking the estuary toward the coast, and they could see the beacon of the Orford Ness Lighthouse. That hill is called Burrow Hill. Can you ask John if he can remember being there with Ed Cabansag and Jim Peniston, or had they become separated?
Okay, that's a great question because, yes, we ended up on the hill. It's in my statement. It's in Ed's statement. When we got to the hill and could see the coast, that's when we could see the lighthouse, okay? And the interesting thing was when I went just back to this in May, I went back to that area, and it's quite a ways. It's quite the hike out there, and it's through rough terrain, and it's just hard to explain how we got out there and back in the time frame. But yeah, once I got there and I looked out, that was it. That was the memory I have of where we ended up. And all three of us were together when we got there.
She also references the part about you stumbling into the stream. She asked the question a little bit differently. It's kind of funny that that there are so many people interested in this. But the question is, can John remember, was it nearer the field or was it the hill where the stream was?
Well, that's the thing. When we backtracked all this, there's different areas where we could have got wet, but I honestly do not know where we exactly, what we stumbled into. And to be honest with you, for us to get from where we were to there, we would have had to cross more than one of them. And that was one of the things that came out under my hypnosis. When we were coming back, it was like, how did we get here? And I don't remember this going out there. So what really did happen? So that is a big question and a mystery to all this.
Did you see the beams of light that were going into the weapons storage area?
The third night with Halt, when we first met with him, he pointed out to some lights that you could see blue lights in the sky. And one of them was over the area of the weapons storage area at that point. And what I mean by is I can't tell you exactly if it was over it, but it was in that vicinity. And at one point, yes, a beam of light did come down towards the ground, towards that facility, yes. In that general location, yes.
Did you hear any, again, I'm just reading as the questions are written, did you hear any scuttlebutt on the results of the said beam on the stored contents?
I didn't hear that till the 90s when Halt came out and said that there was damage to one of the bunkers and that some of the codes were altered in the weapons that were inside the bunkers. So no, not immediately afterwards, but I do know that C5 came in, and I do know it went back in that area, and I did find out also that from Halt, and there was a major that came forward with Robert Hastings that said some of the ordnance was removed because it was damaged.
I don't know if it was on this program or if it was during a conversation that I had with Colonel Halt, but I know that he said to me, it may have been on the air, I know that he said to me that there was a craft, a UFO, that was definitely alien, that was over the weapons storage unit, that was shining beams of light down onto the storage units. So I don't know if he said it publicly out there or if he said it on the show, but he definitely said it to me.
Well, no, he's talked about that, and he actually did a conference they did at the press club. Hastings did one about nuclear weapons and, different armament that was affected by UFOs. And from what I understand, and this is hearsay, so take it for what you want,
right,
that after that conference, some of the people, including Halt, got admonished for some of what they were talking about. And and since then, Halt has walked back a little bit of what he said to Hastings, and he said publicly before. He hasn't been as open or forthright with, that part of it as much. So.
He got angry with me on the phone when I pressed him on the nuclear issue. I mean, it was there was some language that went down. So I pressed him on it. He absolutely said there was no nuclear weapons there, and it got really bad. It got really bad. So now, okay, let's continue. I want to get all of these out. Has your son had any contact or experiences?
Okay, that's an interesting thing to say, because when we lived in Sedona, okay, we had something strange happen that I don't know how to explain it other than just I'll brief summarize. I've had some Hopi people within the tribe, including an elder, reach out to me. I was brought up to Hopi. I was allowed to see some of their dances and their heritage, go to the Rock. Had a Blue Kachina dancer approach me, give me a root, buried the root. When I got back from up there, the elder told me to do it, and he actually called me back up to confirm it, and I hadn't done it yet, so I went out and buried it in the backyard, and there was some orbs and stuff. I can't explain it, but in his room, he yelled and screamed at me shortly after I came back in and was in the house doing other stuff. I ran in the room, and there were some blue orbs in the room, and at one point a red orb started to come through the wall from the outside, and the blue orbs chased it away, and then they departed through the wall and were gone.
You know what? So, when you say something like that out loud, right? Do you feel a little funny? I mean, it's a crazy thing to admit to. I've seen an orb. I've seen only one, but they're real, man. That's all I can say.
Right, and I can't explain it.
I know.
Other than that it happened right after the root was buried. And that then after that, the Hopi took him up and treated him like royalty, and it was a whole unique experience with that took place afterwards. And so that is something that happened for real. And what to totally make of it, I'm not sure. And there was one other event that happened to me while I was in Sedona too that it's hard to explain, but I don't know what it was, and I don't know what these blue lights were.
John, did you eat any of that root? Come on, tell me the truth.
No, I didn't eat any of the fruit. And I can't. There's things that have happened, Jimmy, that just I'm not gonna. If I'm asked, I'll tell you, but I'm not gonna go around talking about it all the time. But there are some strange things that have taken place that I can't explain.
I'm okay with it now. I used to be. I used to hold it in. That's it. I just spew it now. There's nothing else that can be done. This next question is a great one. Also from Brenda Butler. I'm wondering where she's going with this, and I'm sure that you have the answer. In either night that John was involved, can he remember seeing any cattle in the farmer's field that some nowadays call Capel Green?
The only thing on the first night was that we could hear the wildlife and the farm animals, and it appeared to sound like cows. That they went crazy at one point when we were in the forest. This was before we got into the field itself and went forward. But I don't remember seeing any cattle, but you could hear them.
That was the first night. What about the third night?
No, not the third night. I don't remember any kind of. But Halt did mention it that the barnyard animals were going crazy in his tape.
Now, why do you think Brenda would ask if you saw cattle? The reports of the loud animals, that's been out there forever, right? That's been documented. But what about seeing cattle? What is Brenda going on?
I don't know. You'd have to ask her. I don't know.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, let's see. What else do I have here? Just going up. Did you say, this is the question direct, did you say that your wife was adopted too?
No, my wife's not adopted. That's why I asked for the check on myself, and then to see what my son's heritage was because my wife knows her family tree and background, or my ex-wife knows it, but I didn't know mine. So that's what my son was actually asking questions about. That had nothing to do with any of this. He just wanted to know. He knew his mother's side, but he wanted to know my side. So I figured, well, if I'm going to give him this for the study, let's see if they'll at least, do a check on him and I. And they did. And that's what came back.
Were you ever bound by a non-disclosure agreement?
Not until recently.
Say what? Okay.
Not until recently.
Okay. Explain.
I can't say much. I'm under non-disclosure for a couple things right now that I can't talk about until after it becomes public through some of the work that's going on. So, but early on, no, I was never tied to a non-disclosure per se, other than two things. Number one, what was the resources and some of the things at the base and that I still can't talk about. And number two, not signed it, but was told not to talk about it until I got clearance from the Pentagon when the News of the World hit the stands, that I was actually given permission to talk about the incident.
Now, this is a question that happened tonight in real time, and it is about Nick Pope tonight. Nick Pope was on Fox News. Were you aware of that? He was on once again with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, I've seen some of his appearances, but I didn't know about tonight. No, I was doing a show earlier tonight that we were pre-taping, so I don't know what Nick said tonight.
Okay, the question is, does John Burroughs know of a breaking announcement by Nick Pope on Fox News tonight regarding a FOIA document verifying government research into UFOs and other anomalies based on Drake equation estimates?
Yeah, no, I'm well aware of that. In fact, this backstory is that George Knapp released the initial stuff on the DIA reports to Congress, and Nick Pope did a FOIA, which he's one of the few that's done this. Everybody else is still chasing Tic Tac and all this other stuff, and Nick said, oh, wait a minute, we have a Harry Reid letter, we have all this stuff, and we have these DIA documents. Let's confirm if this is real or not. And that, yeah, it came back, FOIA admitted, and it even opened up some of the documents that were not disclosed, that were redacted in the Knapp stuff. There was a couple documents that now were not redacted.
Right.
So he got confirmation from the DIA that, yes, there were papers that they gave to Congress to brief them on some of what's taken place.
John, I want to thank you for being so open and candid tonight. I know that at times it can be difficult not only to recount, but to go over the story once again. But, this is now part of the historical record. And thank you for being patient and answering all of the questions from the audience. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me on, Jimmy. And I guarantee you we've added more to the story and there's more to come. So we didn't put a final fork in it yet.
No, I got the feeling in about 6 months we've got to go back and do it all again. And we will.
Yeah, and I want to tell the audience, if it's true, and I say true this because I don't control this, there's going to be a 9-part documentary coming out sometime in the near future, not only on Rendlesham, but other events and stuff, and some of the involvement with To the Stars program and everything that's going to come out in the next few months. And yeah, you're right. After that airs, I think you're going to want to probably talk more about all of this. So
thank you, John. Be safe. Take care of your health. Take care of your family. Say hello to your mom for me and enjoy the rest of your evening, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jimmy.
John Burroughs. And of course, KGRA, Linda Moulton Howe, their fabulous radio program right here on KGRA. And we took it pole to pole. Amazing conversation. Thank you so much, John. Let's get straight to it. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA, The Planet. It was broadcast owned and copyrighted 2019 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night, right here, Paola Harris. You're not going to want to miss that show. But until then, everybody be safe. Go Beckley Teppy.